Red, I was yeah,
Oh, yes.
I think that was the question. Sorry, Colin.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. We have 4, so we will get started. We just talked to the other 3, and one will not be coming. She's out ill, but the other 2 are on their way, got stuck behind the train as well. So we will proceed. Very good. Kelly's here. Welcome, Kelly.
3 trains later.
3. Oh my gosh. No wonder it took so long. Jeez. So let's start with minutes so we can jump right into our agenda and rock and roll tonight. Anyone have concerns, questions, thoughts about minutes? Motion to approve minutes by Ed and seconded by Karen. Yeah, no, Kelly. Okay, I couldn't quite, I wasn't looking up, so I couldn't quite tell who that was. Thank you, Kelly. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Jumping right into the policy, as you know, we had a few changes on the fly discussed at the last meeting, but not quite written out. So what I've done in this draft you all have before you here is put all the ones in we talked about the last meeting, but also tried to draft a couple that we didn't quite have the words for in the last meeting. And as you will recall, the most hairy, scary one is on the first page, so we'll just jump in with that one. This is the one we added words to. And as I worked on it, the editing, I realized some of it had to be put on page 5 in a different section. So active member of a political party is now reading as an individual who is being paid to work for a political party or a campaign, currently serving as a precinct committee member, or currently serving in county, state, or national party leadership. So 3 different ways of defining active member of a political party. And the other thing that was discussed in the meeting, we had to put on page 5 under item 4 in yellow, saying not helping with nor helping with a current or recent campaign for city council or mayor in the city of Wichita. So those were the couple of things you had asked for, but I realized that if you're helping with a recent campaign in the city, that's not a political party issue, so it cannot be in the definition on page 1. It's got to be in the list of qualifications on page 5. So the only ones I'm reviewing now here are just the yellow highlighted ones, because all the other changes in pinkish, reddish, we talked about last time and were, pretty innocuous, pretty much already agreed to, etc. The next one.
Question,
Yes,
what does recent mean?
exactly. Yes. I thought you might catch that, Ed. That is not a defined term, right? That is subjective. I mean, how do you define that? And that is one that honestly, in writing it,
On page 5.
yes, page 5, number 4 in yellow highlight. If you guys want to come up with a time limit, you could. Otherwise, I just put current or recent, basically giving, I guess, the ability to interpret based on circumstances or what have you. But if you're more comfortable saying,
I use the word involved as
the
opposed to
last
helping.
one,
I use the word involved instead of helping, and,
yes, nor involved.
I mean, on the helping, I don't know if involved is better, but helping seems imprecise and way open to, interpretation, and then I don't know enough to, the election happens at a specific time each year, I mean, can you tie it to as opposed to the most recent campaign or any campaign associated with an election in the last year, or with the date, or
Yes,
then you go forward or backwards.
great points. Karen, is it every 2 years? Every 2 years, there's a city council and or mayor campaign every 2 years. So I'm hearing what you're saying and I'm liking your words. I struggled with helping too, and I couldn't think of another verb.
can I make one other comment?
Please, go ahead.
I don't like sitting on the other side of John Newman when he looks at me. I feel very stupid. I feel very stupid. That's just me.
Well, thanks for that. Okay, so here's one thought, if I heard Ed correctly. It would say nor involved with a current or the most recent campaign. So that would be,
So it wouldn't be putting up a yard sign or something like that, it would be something more than that, you'd
I
have
mean, is
to.
it paid still? Because I think we're back to the same issue we were
Oh,
addressing before.
right. Right, because this one says paid to help in a party campaign
So
or
when did
party
it,
leadership. This one is for a city council, city Wichita. It's nonpartisan. So involved with, I mean, presumably would cover paid or unpaid, but it would presumably not cover just,
should it just be the same
sign.
standard? Whether political or, I mean, it's essentially political, but they're nonpartisan. So should it be the same standard across the board? If it's paid activities that we are restricting, then it should be paid activities we're restricting.
I hear you. What I heard last time though, was that we were going for paid. And we were going for, you can't be helping on a city council campaign or mayor in the city of Wichita. Because that's not covered by partisan,
Right,
but it was like, we don't care if you're working for a school board member. Because that has nothing to do with this ethics policy, but because the policy covers people you're helping get elected. So I interpreted that as two different standards.
Right, I would think that you would not want somebody on the board that was the campaign advisor for one of the city council persons or the mayor, paid or unpaid.
you know,
If I,
we're back to the yard sign issue.
Or how about a $25 campaign donation too?
Yeah.
Something like that, where it's not a huge contribution, but yet it is a contribution.
Okay,
but that ties into money, and I know lots of people that would then just say, I can't want to do that. Say, okay, I'll keep my $25, but I'll give you, $30,000 worth of free work.
Yeah,
well,
We're talking about engagement in, a political organization or substantially engaged with a current or recent campaign for city council or mayor and of the city of Wichita. And I know that substantially engaged or is nebulous,
well,
but
it's better.
But at least, so it gives you some wiggle room, we are saying to the world, we don't want people engaged in the campaigns for our city elected officials to be on.
Let me try this out on y'all, based on what you're saying. And I think one of the decision points here is engaged or involved, or is there a better word? So in the yellow, nor substantially involved with, nor substantially involved, parentheses, paid or unpaid, in parentheses, with a current or the most recent campaign for city council or mayor.
And then you could do, as a matter of clarity, for avoidance of doubt, placing a sign, a yard sign, or passing out, we can list the things that we don't care about. About what they are.
Does not
And they'll
include a
probably
yard
suggest in
sign.
the future, and someone will violate it, but we could. Get close, John.
I'm with you.
Well,
I
not
agree with you,
removing
but
it
you're not
yet.
agree-
You're staring at him though.
I'm trying not to.
No,
You're so smart,
I love John.
I'm hanging on your every word.
Oh, yeah. How would you realize it?
I'm thinking, I'm glad he's thinking of these things, so, we don't have to.
Well, we know the violators.
well, saying substantially involved helps a lot. It would still be open to interpretation. But, if you just thought about it, if it's a $25, but if it's a $200 or $2,000, I don't even know what the limit is. I don't know if anybody here knows, but for city council, but to me, if you're gonna put a list of this does not include,
Maybe not, I'm thinking now, like corporate, for avoidance of doubt, we don't need that, but
Right, but if we did, what would that list say? Yard sign, contributions under X amount?
I think the
Bumper
state,
stickers.
I think the state ethics rules for lobbyists do have like a number under, something under, I think it's $100, does not constitute, this is not a reportable deal, maybe 50. And so we could pick a number that, that we don't care about. If you give less than 100, we don't. If the money is the issue, I don't think the money's our concern though. Our concern is, because everybody that I know that gets substantially involved or engages in campaigns, they don't get paid, but they provide
Yeah.
hours of.
Host an event, for example,
Yeah.
hosting an event would be substantial. Is attending an event, a fundraiser event or a party, is that attending substantial? Probably not. Not if the yard sign's not.
No.
Anyone have any advice or thoughts about whether we should put a list in of what it does not include?
I'm trying to think of statutes that include the word substantial. Because there are, I'm trying to think of which ones they are, but there are statutes that say substantial this or substantial that. There's probably a general understanding somewhere that we can find a definition of what it is
Okay,
Okay,
why don't?
without having to include a list, an exhaustive list.
Yeah, well, if you're talking statutory interpretation, once you include a list, there's various statutory interpretation rules that apply.
Yeah,
But if you say including but not limited to, then you're okay.
Well, why don't we put a pin in that one, because I think I get the gist of it, and maybe a little more research on my part.
so
Will help.
for, this is an example, statement of substantial interest. KSA 19 dash. There's a whole form where you see,
Mhm.
where you find, equitable interest in active. Guide for statement of substantial interest for Sedgwick County.
What if you just say something, if there's a question or doubt, see the ethics officer or, something like that for clarity, if they have a question, what their participation has been, and
Good idea.
and then we can just move on.
And I was thinking too, for tonight, I was thinking I can go back later and talk to the city attorney to see if they have any ordinances regarding people running for office and what are limitations or minimums and things like that. We could probably pull it from that. What would be a good number for a contribution?
Yeah, there's both.
So sort of conflicts of interest policy.
Yeah, there's state conflict of interest policy that applies to local governments. It's in section 19, I think, but I'm not sure. The state conflict of interest, and you can also go to the Kansas Government Ethics website.
Yeah.
And there will be a definition of substantial, blah, 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 and what constitutes. And if you really want to dig it, there are government ethics committees or board opinions. So you can go in there and say, when has X act, you can look, put the word in substantial, and find out how they rule.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll try that. Thank you very much.
it's very nice to say.
Okay, so going on to the next one, still on page 5, let me make sure, yeah. So on page 5, there's a second one in yellow, and that's number 8. And that is be representative of the demographics, of the city, so here's my error that I found this afternoon. This is your test to see if anyone else found my error. So when we talked last time, we were talking about the ethics officer not being required to live in the city limits. So writing, the way we wrote this was preferably live in the Wichita region, but not necessarily live in the city limits. And what I realized this afternoon is I put it in the wrong place, right? Because this list is all you all board members. It's not for the ethics officer. So I will move that over to the ethics officer section, which is right below this section. And I was thinking at the top of page 6, there's what we added for the qualifications of ethics officer. We had already added meet the above qualifications for a member of the Ethics Advisory Board, and then I'll put except preferably live in the Wichita region, but not necessarily live in the city limits. But keep all you all living in the city limits. So that was my error, and I apologize for not finding it until this afternoon when I reviewed this again. Now, let's see. So we're on page 6, and there's a couple more yellows. So the Ethics Advisory Board Procedures section, second paragraph, last sentence, we added and ending with the mayor's appointee. So you remember talking about that last time where we said selection of a member of the Ethics Board would sort of be in our rotating basis, beginning with District 1. And you said it'd be more clear if we said and ending with the mayor's appointee. And then the next paragraph has another yellow in it, and that was making sure we actually struck out the sentence that says the complaint and written response will be delivered to the EAB for investigation. Because I think in last version, I had added the new language, but I hadn't stricken that sentence. So striking that makes it very clear with the addition of the following language that the ethics officer and or outside counsel shall perform an investigation and when completed, present their findings and legal advice to the EAB in executive session. Now, if any of you have any thoughts or anything else on this you want to talk about, we want to do that next. But then next is I have comments from a citizen that I got mid-afternoon today that I thought some of them were like, I mean, I haven't fully processed it all, but some of them I thought you would want to review. But before we go to that citizen, did any board member have anything that you wanted to talk about with this version other than what we already have? So if you go to page 3, this is definitions, and the comments about definition by the person from the public was that we, and I know you all did not write this, but when this was written the first time, there was no definition of friend. So there's a definition of relatives and no definition of friend. And so no inclusion in this policy of your friends, right? So that was something to think about. Another criticism was the actual definition of relatives that is in the policy. And you know, relative definitions are hard, right? It's like, how far do you want to go? And what they did when the city council passed this before, you can see, they thought of the in-laws and they thought of the grandparents, grandchild. So you're talking, you know, 3 generations plus in-laws. And the comment from the public was that, what about step siblings and half siblings? Because I think the way it's written does say, and any other family member living in the same household.
Well, I would argue, unless it said, I mean, now I've got my church hat on, unless it said biological, I would think the current definition would include step and the like. I would argue that.
That's fair.
A lot of families don't differentiate that.
Yeah, we're gonna say the adopted children.
Right. It's just blended family type
I
statement.
mean, we can do that, I mean, you know, to include, you know, step and half, you know, but then you want, I mean, then we have to, you know, do a D&I discussion. We include play mamas, play aunties, you know, all, you know, because some of my play are closer than people that I got blood with. And so, you know, how far do you want to go with, you know, with this? Mom and then.
Is it more clear if you said siblings instead of sister, brother? That way, it's all siblings.
That's fair.
It's kind of non-gender specific as well, sister and brother. So if you said siblings, that would include half, step, non-gender specific. I don't know, I just thought of that off the top of my head, but
I have a problem with that.
I like that.
But I just don't think we need to go into the step path of it.
Yeah, it could make a really long list.
I just noticed the conflict of interest definition uses the term substantial interest in it.
Hey there.
And so
Ooh,
it's very similar.
we like substantial interest. Good catch.
So what was the Friend thing? We're adding a definition?
Well,
I would oppose that.
I didn't have, they did not suggest an actual definition, but kind of referred me to some sources. And I mean, it came in this afternoon and I haven't had time to research how would you define that, but the comment was made that if I go out and look at some of these other sites of a couple of different organizations that work on city ethics policies, Harvard University, the Edmund and Lily Safra Center for Ethics, and City Ethics. There are two sites, and honestly, I haven't had time to get into them. But the idea was that it's typical for city ethics policies to include friends. I don't know if the city council,
How do you define that?
Yeah.
I mean, an example I have from an unrelated context, so, actually, I mean, it's on record, so there was a dispute maybe 10 years ago involving a church. I mean, it ended up in state court because of the property aspect, but one of the claims related to the two leaders being friends. Well, everybody knows I mean, where do you draw the line from a friend? And so the conclusion way it ended up was, and I don't even know in this document, there's such thing, but if a matter came to me as a member of the board where I felt I needed to recuse myself because of my relationship, that I would, but I wouldn't want somebody else defining for me the relationship where I couldn't be impartial. And so maybe there should be an impartiality requirement, but defining who is and who is not a friend, it's not gonna work. I mean, all of our members of the Wichita Bar Association, for example, we could call ourselves friends, but there are some matters that I could be impartial on and some that I couldn't. And it's up to me to be ethically,
And you make a good point too, in today's world, what is a friend? Is it a Facebook friend?
Exactly.
Or do you have to prove some level of intimacy of, well, I've been to their house for dinner? Or is it a business acquaintance?
Or is it because you got appointed by your city council member? Does that make you their friend? Because obviously they respect you in that regard.
That they may barely know you.
Yeah.
Okay, so a third thing, I think third and final thing that was brought up by this member of the public was whether the policy should say, and this would be on the page 5 under the Ethics Advisory Board section, where we have 8 listed. The 9th one would basically be that you would pass a criminal and civil background check. So if you were being considered for this board before that nomination was taken to the city council for a vote, that you would be vetted by the city doing a criminal and civil background check.
I think they did.
What's a civil background check?
I think,
This is civil background.
credit check, I think. I'm saying, we.
We're not gonna do credit score. I'm not afraid of this, but I'm just, is
No.
that what a
Child, every time in my life I didn't, so that,
civil background check is called? It's a credit check?
but I think we did,
It'll show perhaps civil claims that,
Interesting.
so there's particular rules about doing
Yeah.
those types of.
we signed something, I know,
Yeah,
we did,
I
I
hope
think
so.
I did something.
I hope so, because you have.
Yeah.
and I think you've all said something very clear, is that the city does checks on people, but on all boards, Karen, do you think? Or-
That, I do not,
I don't
I
know,
don't think so, not on my.
probably only
regular,
certain boards
Yeah.
maybe, but
We did
it's
for
some
this
sort
one,
of check.
Yeah.
We did for this one, I
Yeah, we
think.
did for this one, yes.
And that's a really good point. I should check that ordinance, because at the beginning of that section, it says qualifications, in addition to the requirements of 2.12 of the Code of City of Wichita. I checked that a long time ago. It's like 3 pages long. I'll check that and see if the background check is in it. But regardless, I think we would just put that out there for the council, because they either are gonna do it anyway, or maybe they do partial. Like maybe the city would be doing a criminal background check, but not a civil. Or maybe they're doing civil personal background, but not criminal. I'm not sure. But that's easily figured out by, I think, by the city council, when we take this to them. And we'll run it by city staff to figure out which one they do, or if they do both, or if they wanna, they see any problem with putting it in here. Because if it's done, I mean, you could argue, if it's being done anyway, why not have it on the list, so everybody knows?
Yeah.
Before they let a council person put their name up, and then find out, oh, well, there's something in your
And that
background we
was,
wouldn't
that
want.
was my, reaction was, well, I have to do a background check just for this, because I don't recall, off the top of my head, any other board hadn't had a background check,
Okay.
but it was something that was fairly
Found
new.
the packet on here that says, welcome, are you ready to begin the background check process?
So I'll check and see
There
which
we go.
type they do now, and if they have any objection to putting it on the list, if they're doing it anyway, or if we, okay.
As long as you do it for everybody.
I think it was done electronically. I'm trying to
Yes,
remember.
sure
it
you're right.
was. It was.
Okay, so if there's nothing else on policy, this is good direction, and we'll keep proceeding with that. And the other thing I wanted to tell you on policy is I'm scheduled to present these changes or these recommended edits to the city council at a workshop on Tuesday, January 24th at 9:30 in the morning. There's 4 items on the workshop agenda, and I'm third. Okay, and so I don't know how much time they'll spend on this, or if they'll even get to me, so to speak, but we'd like to just basically do what this document does, is with the commentary of saying, here's what we're suggesting and here's why, and walk through it, and presumably we'd have time for questions, that they're not gonna vote, because it's just a workshop, but that would give, I think, them the heads up and the ability to air it publicly if they have any questions with these ideas and edits. And then I have no idea what will be scheduled for a city council meeting. I think it just depends on how that workshop goes. So now we have the latest and greatest Corinthian Kelly to start us off on the procedures. So I think you all have a copy of that first draft document. And if anyone's watching online, we did not post this first draft document. The policy was posted on the website if they wanted to follow what we just did. But Corinthian has a PowerPoint to walk through the procedures. And if you'll recall, this procedure sheet that you have first lists the actual council procedure in regular type font. And then in red was the previous city staff person's questions that we were handed. And Janet left in like June, and she left us with all these red questions. So we just started writing procedures to try to answer those questions. And you can see in the document, we didn't get done. We got so far and said, well, that's a lot to go over tonight, and we'll proceed from there. So Corinthian, you want to walk us through all these?
Yes, thank you so much, Kathy. And you did my intro for me. So if everyone can pull out, again, the top of your paper should say draft procedures to implement council policy. And Josie has already pulled up the PowerPoint. Josie, if you could go to slide 2. What I plan on doing on the screen will list the proposed procedure. I'll read that out for everyone's hearing. Then I'll pause for any modifications that you all like to make. Then we'll move on. All right, so starting with procedure 1.
Can we, once again, so are we gonna do this stuff at the top here?
Well, Kathy gave a little context there. So this is a working document, and to go over what you see, it has the policy stating, the policy updates that we have are in yellow on this document. Then in the red are some of the guiding questions that our predecessor, Janet, came up with in relation to the policy. And what I'll be sharing tonight are some of the procedures that we developed in response to some of those questions. If that makes any sense. Okay. All right, so procedure one says, after assigning a case number, the city clerk's office shall forward the complaint to the staff person designated by the city manager to staff the EAB or the Ethics Advisory Board. Staff shall send the complaint to the ethics officer and the EAB's outside legal counsel within 5 business days of receipt. Now, my question to the board, does that procedure read well? Or are there any modifications you would like to make to that particular procedure?
Basically, the new stuff we came up with is assigning a case number to every complaint that gets filed, just because that wasn't specified before and the staff in the clerk's office weren't doing it. But obviously, as we started coming in, we started realizing we need numbers to keep them straight. And then the 5 days we kind of made up based on the whole notion of getting it done quickly. The day limitations in the policy now say days, 7 days for this and 7 days for that. If it's not specified already in the policy, we use business days in the procedure to get away from this. Something happened on Friday at the end of the day, and all of a sudden you've got a Monday holiday, and all of a sudden you've got 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, to get something done. So we figured 5 days would be enough, but still gives a level of urgency to get this out.
Would anyone, does anyone propose any additions or modifications to any of the language and procedure you want to remove?
Well, we're doing a lot of generic staff person, so we don't know who that will be. The city manager will designate who that, because I don't know how their organization works either.
Well, in the absence of the defined ethics officer, we wanted to use a generic term for the clerk's. We wanted to name the clerk's office as being the point person or out of that office to kind of start off and kick off the process.
Yeah, so here's the thing, if it's the ethics officer, it says that, if it's the city clerk, it says it, if it says staff, that's the person designated in the city manager's office to actually staff this board. Right now, that's Maddie, and Maddie's homesick, okay, Josie's helping out, God bless her, and Corey was, maybe he left. So, but Maddie is the person who was recently assigned to be like Janet Johnson was before, staffing the board. Okay, and so a lot of these procedures are about defining what the ethics officer would do versus what the administrative staff person would
Is the
do
worker bee.
versus the clerk. It's helping them internally know who's supposed to do what.
Right.
The clerk does this, and then the lawyer does this, and admin does this, and this, you know. So this is, we're writing these procedures so city staff, as they turn over, understand who's supposed to do what, and things don't get caught up.
And I would also add in the vein of Kathy and I won't always necessarily be in this.
Yes, we're also writing the procedures so that we can exit, and then the staff will have a playbook to go by.
So do we say 5 business days, and then how many, do you put in a time span as to when it's presented
Presented to,
the ethics board? Like within the monthly meeting, or, you know, do they get an
we
idea?
get there, we get there,
That's
because
another
this,
procedure.
this is really step by step.
Okay.
So
this is
why
just
don't you
step
move
one.
on to the next step, and I think it'll become really clear.
So the policy won't show up. I mean, we're not, because I want to be clear, we're only talking about the procedure.
We're only
The
talking
policy
about
won't
what's
be
bold.
anywhere.
Right, we're only talking about what's bold, and the reason we put the policy sections in here, it's because we're trying to say, you need that procedure to better define the policy.
So then, question, then where do we say that if this is part of the procedure, where does it say that the complaint must be in writing, must be under oath?
That's already in the policy.
It's in the policy, so we do see the policy there. I'm sorry, I mean slow.
No.
I think the policy provisions are just in here for convenience to see what the procedure refers.
So is there any place that the public will see the requirements for filing a complaint?
Yes, that already exists.
And that's this language up here.
And these,
So where it's highlighted using the prescribed form, it's in yellow, so I assumed that was an addition.
Okay,
Want to be made.
no, well, okay, so that policy we just went through,
No, we just went through a procedure.
no, the thing we just did
Oh.
on council policy,
Yeah.
of, with me, not Corinthian,
Uh-huh.
that was the city council passed policy.
Okay,
And we're suggesting changes. So in this document, the things in yellow are the changes we're suggesting. Okay,
In this,
so for example, on page 1, policy, in order to be considered by the ethics board. So if you go to your policy statement, that, where are we starting with here? We're on page 6, ethics advisory board procedures. See, in the policy on page 6, they created a section called procedures, and now we're further defining that because their section was not made for staff to follow. It's very broad. And that's why Janet had so many questions about that.
okay, so then, in this paragraph, in order to consider by ethics.
Yes.
By the ethics board, so then I go here, and then I had it, that's, I'm glad that, so, well, for me, so then, there's gonna be other changes, I think. So, I may be wrong, but signed by the complainant under oath, and then in parentheses notarized.
that's how it's written down.
Right, I know that how it's written out. My question is, notarized doesn't necessarily mean under oath. Notarized means that the notary said you were the signer. It doesn't mean that the person signing is alleging those things under oath. And so we should probably make that clear. The second thing is, it says, file with the clerk, and the second says an electronic submission will be considered to be in writing. Then how do you do an electronic submission under notarized?
You get it notarized yourself, like at your office, then you
You scan it.
scan it and email it to the clerk.
That's what we mean, okay.
Yeah.
But I do know notarized doesn't mean under oath.
Should it be a smart verification?
I don't know, I don't know what we want, I don't care, but,
It's a hotly contested.
I just, it doesn't, I would think in these kind of complaints, I just know this from the church world, that, I mean, people will, particularly in the political world, you wanna make sure that people are out using our time, our resources, that they're at least willing to swear that what they're alleging
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
Shenanigans.
It's a great point, and honestly, that one is, like was said, it was written by city council and approved. Under oath, or parentheses, notarized, but then, when the staff made the form that you're supposed to do your complaints on, it says, and I don't know if you'll think this is good enough, but this is what it says, and keep in mind, that's one of our tasks is to update the form, and right now I have marks on it, so your input would be very helpful. It says this, after they put their name and address, and here's the violation you're alleging, it says, this complaint is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief of the undersigned. I declare that to the best of my knowledge and belief, the allegations in this complaint are true. And then I sign my name with my notary.
What if we said and notarized?
That would do it for me.
Under oath and notarized. So
Instead
take
of
out the
in
parens and put in and. I cannot imagine that the city council would have a problem with
That
that.
make it more technically correct. And
Okay.
it requires both of that to be, because I've litigated this issue in other matters for whether or not it's sufficient that it's not notarized, but it says it's under oath.
Mhm.
And there are two separate things, but I like it being required to be notarized, because I mean, just like, you got some skin in the game at that point.
Okay. Okay, so what I've done back on the policy document, I've just taken out the parentheses around notarized and put in the word and, under oath and notarized.
But I'm okay with the procedure.
Well, I think technically it would be good to put language in there under oath in the presence of the notary, and I would say
Oh.
attest that the person is going to attest to the truthfulness of the statements under oath in the presence of the notary. Because as Ed pointed out, sometimes people, notaries not only do attestation, they also do affirmations. And affirmation means simply that that person whose signature is there is the person who signed it. not somebody else. That's all it is. Just
Yeah.
identify, confirm that that's the right person.
And so that's what the notary brings, is this person gave me their ID, this, they are who they say they are, but then the document would actually say that would, right
You
now. it
swear
says-
before the notary, is what you're saying.
That's
Yeah,
most
under oath, attest to the truthfulness of the thing
Attest.
in the presence of another, under oath in the presence of another.
Okay.
And then there are scenarios where you signing something that says you're doing it under oath, the law will recognize, or we don't actually do that. So I don't have a preference.
Okay. Why don't I redraft that and run it by you guys and make sure it's what you're saying, but attest to the truthfulness. Okay, gotcha.
Our sage, Mr. Rapp, thank you, sir.
And did you, or did anybody have anything else on page 1 of the procedures? We'll go to page 2 then.
I rewrite this whole policy. I said, just did it at Starbucks. I didn't know that wasn't our task, but I thought,
Well,
Pay them to
You know, it
make
was hard. I mean, I think the city council had several meetings and workshops and a lot of different views. And so when we were given this task, it was just, if there are necessary changes to the policy, but don't go whole hog rewriting the whole thing.
Already did.
Because, yeah,
Pandora's box.
yeah. So we're trying to make sure whatever, we suggest change is really needed.
can I?
Do you have anything else on page 1, Ed?
Was,
We
Nothing else
value
on
your
page one.
input.
Okay,
Okay.
no, that's cool. Let's go to page 2.
that's where I am.
Okay.
All right, on page 2, the policy, the policy is listed above. That's from that document that Kathy was just pointing to. Some of the questions we were trying to answer was, will response be provided for the complaint? Who does what? So the procedure that we're proposing, staff shall send notice of non-action to the complaint within 5 business days of determination and notify the EAB of the termination. In the event of a disagreement between the ethics officer and the outside legal counsel, staff shall schedule the matter for the next available EAB meeting for determination of grounds of the complaint. So is there any, or are there any modifications that we would like to make to this particular procedure?
I'm perfectly willing to be thrown off this board. So first of all, I don't know what the world determination of the ground of the complaint means. But that's one, but that you only get there when. Well, I'm just going, I'm doing it. So let's,
No, I mean, the whole idea, Ed, with the policy itself is that when we get a complaint, we give it, we immediately look at it and say, does it meet the qualifications?
but that's
Was
not
it in
determination of the
writing? Was it-
grounds. That's not determination of the grounds, that's determination of the sufficiency of the complaint. Right? Is that what you mean?
Okay, so with a
The
better,
choice of words.
yeah, okay, so the
I think
word,
that, I mean, I think that,
Yeah, overstate.
No, for the procedure, what would you use there instead of grounds?
Yes.
Sufficiency, sufficiency.
well,
Good word.
that's, I mean, I think that's what you mean, I mean, it doesn't have to
Or
be sufficient.
validity.
It's referring back to the policy, but,
But I think the policy's all wrong.
Sufficiency is a good word, do you think, John?
sure.
That's what we
Well,
meant when we wrote it.
So these procedures are gonna end up in a document, I assume,
Yes.
but is it gonna just be, here's a policy of the board?
Yeah, it's procedures of the city staff, basically to tell everybody what they're supposed to do with.
It's not gonna be
things.
adopted by
The ethics office, you're giving guidance to the ethics officer and to the staff, so they
Yes.
know what to do when weird things
okay, I just didn't know how official it would be to have the weight of the.
Right, it won't have the same weight,
No.
but the longer it stays around, it will become the Bible.
That's true.
For how this operates.
But it can be changed by the board. I think the clear part here is we're not saying put it in the policy, because every time the policy gets updated, it has to go to city council. But the procedures can be changed and updated as we learn things. But if the board's procedures, that means the staff can't change the procedure without coming to the board and saying, well, we need to change this and here's why, and get the board to sign off on that.
Yeah, so why don't we just say sufficiency as discussed in the policy or something?
Mhm.
Now, these edits, we have the strike throughs in the policy portion. Is that something that somebody's recommending to the city council? Because you said it has to be changed.
Yeah, in the policy portion in this document, everything stricken through or highlighted in yellow is what we just went over in the last meeting and or earlier today. It is identical to this document. We just,
Right, but my
But yes,
question,
it has to be approved by.
but my question is, has it already been approved by them?
Next
So
Tuesday.
that we don't, so then we can keep going.
Do you have any edits for that first sentence?
I don't know, yes.
Okay, yeah, I see it. I haven't even
So,
gotten past it yet.
yeah,
I
we have,
can't keep going back to it.
yeah, so. I think we need something different than, after we had our discussion last time of the day, than what's written here, I think.
okay, are you talking about the policy
I'm talking about the policy.
with all the yellow in it
Okay.
on the top of page 2? Is that where you're
I'm
at?
talking about page 6 of the policy.
The second paragraph.
Page 6, right.
In the middle of the page, is that what you're referring to?
One second. Yeah. Can I just have a second?
I'm wondering if we're missing a comma. The ethics officer, comma, who may consult with outside legal counsel to the board, comma, shall review the complaint and take no further action on any complaint
Right,
that they determine to be incomplete.
The ethics officer, comma, who may consult with outside legal counsel to the board.
shall
comma,
review.
You're right, I don't have a comma. there. Shall review the complaint and take no further action on any complaint that they determine to be incomplete, frivolous, groundless on its face, or which fails to state a violation. So on the procedure document, yes, we would add the ethics officer at the top, comma, add who, may consult with outside legal counsel to the board, add a comma. And then over in the policy, we would add the comma and the who.
Right, and
And
see,
then
what I would do,
you-
the way I got off track is this all runs, so I put a period after complaint and then say,
Yes,
the ethics officer may take no action, blah, 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 all the way through, or, and then second, the ethics officer, if the ethics officer determines that doesn't make, that it's incomplete, then do all this stuff in the third paragraph.
yeah, so put a period after complaint.
Okay.
And
Line
then-
2, end of line 2,
Mhm.
and then instead
Well,
of,
no,
Beginning of
2,
line
3,
two.
4 words into line 2.
oh, that complaint. So you're saying the ethics officer who may consult with outside legal counsel to the board shall.
Shall review the
complaint,
complaint, period, I would say, and then get rid of and then
The ethics
the officer
officer,
may take no action on any complaint, blah, blah, and I would do a 1-2 kind of thing.
Mhm.
They can either take no action or they can do, so it's really clear that they have two options. And then to take option 1, this is the path you go. I'm not writing that, and then to take option 2, this is the path you go.
Yeah.
I was completely confused when I was,
Okay,
So
what are
shall-
the two options,
shall
Kelly?
review the complaint, period. The ethics officer may take no further action on any complaint that they determine to be incomplete, frivolous, or groundless on the face, or which fails to state a violation of the statement of policy as defined earlier in this policy. If the ethics officer determines that a violation has been established
Right.
for the ethics policy,
right,
then they,
do all this stuff here. And then this sentence about in the absence of an ethics officer, I think that should come at the end.
in a separate.
Of the stuff that shouldn't be in the list of,
Okay, I think I hear what you're saying. is first say they may consult with the outside legal counsel board and shall review the complaint. Second sentence is the EO may take no further action on any complaint that they determine to be incomplete, frivolous, or groundless on its face, or be spelled as a state violation of statements earlier defined. Add a new sentence, if the ethics officer determines
So basically.
it's a
you're-
sufficient complaint.
Yeah, you just basically elevate, you have a transition that elevates all of this stuff.
Determines the complaint is sufficient.
Per the policy.
Is sufficient per the policy.
Then the ethics officer shall advance a complaint to the whoever, however it goes.
Okay,
And this in the absence of an ethics officer, I think that should go.
And it's
In a
Next
separate thing, it shouldn't be tied there together.
okay, put a paragraph there. Okay, we can work on that. And then, so the procedure here, that is that, I don't know if anybody had issue with the procedure, but we've got, the staff shall send notice of non-action to the complainant within 5 business days of determination. And notify the EAB of the determination.
Right.
And then if there's disagreement between the EO and the legal counsel, the staff will schedule the matter for the next EAB meeting, so you all can determine, is this a sufficient complaint or is it not? Determine the sufficiency of the complaint as described in the policy. Everybody's happy with number 2?
Okay.
Corinthian, number 3, we get to go to a third slide.
Get to go to a third
How
slide.
exciting is that?
So just a little further down on page 2 of this document, again, the policy is stated beforehand. The questions we attempted to answer are in the red. The proposed procedure for 3 is staff shall email valid complaints to the city attorney within 3 business days of receipt and notify the city clerk's office of the pending investigation.
Word valid.
Or sufficient.
Sufficient.
I don't want to place too much weight because the screening process, like any pleading or complaint, the initial screening process is pretty low and it doesn't speak to the validity or the merits. I just makes me uncomfortable that I'm screening things and someone's gonna say that I said it's valid.
Sufficient is the right word, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably being overly.
No,
No, sufficient's a good word.
it's a difference between fact.
It's
pleading and
consistent.
notice pleading.
This policy is what should go in front of, in the absence of an ethics officer,
Mhm, I see what you're saying, yeah,
and then make in the absence the next paragraph.
okay, gotcha. I will move it.
Just 3 days credit problem. That's pretty short.
Should we stick with 5?
Just people get sick or on vacation.
Okay.
I don't know. It makes no difference to me other than cutting the staff a break. For some reason, 3 days is.
Okay,
Okay, so the modifications I have right now, instead of the word valid complaints, change to sufficient. Instead of 3 business days, change that to 5. Any other modifications? Move home. All right. If not, if we all can turn to page 3 in that packet. You can move it against the next slide. Thank you, Josie. The policy again is stated at the top. And the questions we sought to answer were in red. The procedure, staff shall keep track of the 7 days, initiate a phone call to ensure receipt of the complaint and intent to respond in 7 days, and inform the ethics officer of any receipt of non-responses.
So is this business days? I would assume so because staff is gonna have to.
it's not, because it's in the policy as the council passed, and they did not use the word business days. And I have already double checked that, because you'll remember we already have 4 complaints, so I've already been sending them on to folks. And it was told to me by people who were involved in the conversations with the council when they worked on this policy last year, 2 years ago, that 7 days meant 7 days. So, like, if I sent one today to an elected official who was being complained about, I'd be very clear. You have 7 days from receipt, please confirm that you received it. And I do it all by email. So if they're not sitting at their email, they may not be getting it the minute I'm sending it, but maybe they get it hours later or, when they're out of a meeting or what have you.
And you probably should be less lenient on the elected official as opposed to, Joe citizen.
Well,
So
the
I don't have any problem with the strict 7 days.
responses probably gonna take a little time.
Do we say with the response,
If, as far as a
you want to go back?
suggestion on the policy, I could add to the policy that we would suggest to the city council that they change it to business days.
14.
7 business days. It basically gives them relief on the weekend. I mean, if they're gone or something.
Question, do you want to, if you want to, I was just not concerned, this is an establishment, they have to initiate calls to ensure receipt of the complaint. I guess we're taking care of city council. Do you want to say back on procedure 3, not seeing that, shall email ballot contains read receipt or whatever? I mean, since this is the policy, then you have less obligation to try to call or reach them, or do we want to? I don't care.
Or say something, confirm receipt, not define it,
Yeah, I'm just,
because they could do that with an email. I don't know, do you think it needs to be a phone call?
Well, it's a very good point. I wrote it as a phone call because I think some people tend to send emails repeatedly, but sometimes it could be a text too. This is between staff and an appointed or an elected official.
Electronically or by phone?
Yeah.
I think it never seen.
Ensure, somehow they need to ensure receipt.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because we're not following service process type rules.
How about and confirm receipt? And that way you don't say how.
That's fine.
And confirm receipt. So you could put, like Ed said, a read receipt deal, read receipt deal on the email. You can ask, like I have been doing, please respond to me when you get this email, so I know you got it, and then
Then you have a record of it.
Yeah.
Versus one person's word.
that's true. Okay, I'll change it to staff shall keep track of the 7 days and confirm receipt of the complaint. Good catch.
Any other modifications, looking at procedure 4?
But it says what happens if they don't respond. I guess I need to know that.
Okay, well,
If you don't tell me anything differently, and I'm still investigating these matters and they don't respond, I'm just not gonna consider their response. But then the question arises, I may contact them anyway
for
to interview them, which we'll learn tonight. I'm about to enter into the investigation phase of interviewing the witnesses, and I'll have to decide whether I'm gonna actually interview the people who have responded. If I have more questions. So if they don't respond, we don't have a default process, or I necessarily think we should.
But we could state it in there that.
But they don't have the opportunity to respond. But I might still contact them, unless the rule is that if they don't respond and they don't get a say or something, then I guess I won't. But if you don't tell me otherwise, I might still contact them and ask them some questions. And then if they don't speak to me, I won't have their side of the story. Yes.
Just dump that in your report.
Mhm.
They said they didn't want to respond, and when you contact them to interview them.
Yep.
They declined to be interviewed. The Board can take all that into consideration and determine the validity.
What's that?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's the assumption that I was making in writing this succinctly like this, and Corinthian and I writing it was that you inform the staff informs the ethics officer that, hey, I didn't get a response. Okay, well, we're still starting, but I would like to go ahead and add that statement in here. If no response is received, the investigation will proceed. Just to be clear to the staff that that doesn't stop anything. You don't give them extra time. You
Right.
just keep going, and if they go ahead and give a response later, well then, fine. Or if they get called
What
or
if you get
whatever.
what if you get a late law response?
Right, that's.
I was gonna say, what about requests for extensions due to
Yeah,
hospitalization or car accident, like, I don't know.
You open that box, then we cover else, I don't know. It's worth talking about, but if you're in for a penny, you're in for procedurally, but yeah, I mean, give them 7 days and they don't give it to you in 7 days.
What if that 5 days
Not
they say,
considered their.
I did not get this done, my mom just died yesterday,
exactly.
what do you do?
To me, if you don't want to give like extra time for extenuating circumstances, you just say, whenever we get it, we'll look at it, but we're not gonna hold up the investigation waiting for it. We gave you 7 days and 7 days when we didn't do anything to investigate, we held it. But if you give it in 8 days or 9 days, we'll still take it.
What if they give it to you on the eve of the meeting?
Right,
Yeah.
so I mean, we open.
Somebody needs to think through the consequences of
Yeah.
not giving a written response.
Our-
And whether you, does that bar you from giving anything?
Our inclination as lawyers is to superimpose legal procedural rules. I do it, most of my work at the federal court. And boy, if you don't ask for an extension before the termination of your deadline, you don't get one, but so, do we put absence and extension of time for good cause shown or something,
Those were my thoughts, like, you have to
Yeah,
show good cause.
And then do we say requested before the 7 day? I don't know, how
for
do we want to start getting on these procedural issues?
I think before.
I'll work with whatever you give me.
Well, okay, how about the ethics officer could extend the time for good cause shown? Not the staff, but the ethics officer. So the staff would be,
If made within the 7 days.
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. That way it's not staff deciding it, but it's the ethics officer deciding it, and then, like you say, they have to show the good cause. So the final report would presumably say, we got a response from this elected official in 14 days because they were given a week extension because they were out of the country on vacation or something, and
I was thinking like
Could not
Sarah
do it.
Lopez, I know she's county, but she's about to have twins, and I don't know when she's gonna go in labor, but if she was city council instead of county commission, and she went into labor, and she had these 7 days, I feel like you should have good cause in certain circumstances.
well, I will tell you, I agree and have already dealt with that because we were doing the first couple through the Christmas and the New Year's holidays.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, that's when I double checked with Jennifer to say, they really meant 7 days, right? Because you've got 2 days on the weekend and a day of federal holiday, and that's 3 of the 7 days. And it's like, yeah, they really meant that. So to give them the authority, the ethics officer, the authority to say, if there's good cause shown. And honestly, one of them, it was good I sent it the day I did because, he was gonna be out an entire week after Christmas. It's like if I'd have sent it then, he'd have been in another state, not looking at emails.
Is there a time limit within which it gets sent and then 7 days are triggered? Did we already talk about that?
Is it 5 days?
So there's no discretion, like, well, maybe I won't send this today because it's right before Thanksgiving, but there's a requirement as to how quickly, Yeah, we deal with that in the legal profession. It used to be anything less than 11 days, didn't include weekends or holidays.
Right.
But now it's whatever day it says, it's what it is. So you don't see many 7-day.
So the ethics officer can hold it. The staff cannot hold it, because the staff has to give it to the ethics officer in 5 days. But then the ethics officer could potentially.
I wouldn't mind leaving a little
Like
back
Just
door
rush
on
it.
that,
federal holidays.
so that you're not
Excluding.
Yeah.
because there may be some
So
scenario.
that we don't have to list all that. I
Because it
think
doesn't
that would be
exclude holidays.
too wordy.
I think that's fine.
Okay,
The whole point is everybody knows we're trying to handle these things as quickly as you can, but.
all right.
Okay.
Gina brought up a great suggestion, maybe putting in language excluding holidays or.
That's the lead, sorry, I didn't do much copying today. I've been doing this all day, jumping in before people are even done with the sentence. Legally, it's either those days or not including weekends and holidays.
Okay.
But I guess we're not precluded from saying not including holidays, since we're not really following the statute. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I was thinking, because if it is a federal holiday, then we wouldn't count that as a day now.
Would business days fix that?
Yeah, that's my use of the term business days. It doesn't include Saturday and Sunday and legal holidays.
So we're adding business days?
It's okay, you think, because remember you were just saying that you said.
No, it's not. So in the procedures that we're writing for staff to do things, we're using business days, because staff don't work on those days, right?
Okay.
But the policy the council wrote is 7 days. And I think what we're leaning to here is saying something when I present, well, here's the changes your board wants you to consider. One of them is either do 7 business days, or really maybe preferably would be give the ethics officer the authority to say they could give an extension if they show cause within the 7 days. I think that's better than 7 business days, because all business days gives you is weekends and holidays.
Yeah. either
Versus
make-
if you give the ethics officer the authority.
Or the other option is to make it 14 days period or something.
Mhm.
I don't care.
Well, I could give them all 3 if you want. Just say, we came up with 3 different ideas, 7 business days instead of 7 days, 14 days. So you have a full 2 weeks to respond,
Should
including
take care of
weekends.
most.
Yeah. Or that the ethics officer would be able to give an extension if they show cause within the 7-day period.
I
So
think,
I thought it was 7 business days, period. And then if they respond within 7 business days, then they could get an extension. Not that they're mutually exclusive, as separate options, because
Oh,
we need
business.
staff to be available. So that doesn't include the holidays and the weekends and that sort of stuff,
I
so
see what
7
you're saying.
business days.
Okay.
And then if good cause, given notice before the expiration of 7 business days.
Okay, I'm with you.
I think
So we would say, add business days regardless. So it gives them a full week of work days, not take 3 days out for a weekend and a holiday. And we would say, give the ethics officer the ability to extend that if there's good cause shown within the 7 business day period.
correct.
I think
and
that's
that
good.
benefits,
That's what I appreciate.
that benefits the elected official.
And
So I don't know why they'd be opposed to that.
yeah,
Okay, got it.
Joseph, you can go to 5. So the policy that we were responding to, we know that the ethics officer and or outside legal counsel in the policy shall perform an investigation. So the question we were trying to answer were the parameters. The procedure we proposed, staff shall email the Ethics Advisory Board the complaint and response at the same time. The ethics officer and or outside legal counsel shall perform the investigation and report to the EAB the following in executive session. A, information to identify the case. B, the allegation details and information about the subject. C, the investigation scope and purpose. D, the interview summaries and reports. E, the list of evidence. And F, recommendations.
And we would love input, yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna say this out loud. I would change the A through F to allegations summary, response summary, investigation summary, and conclusions / recommendations.
Allegation summary, investigation
No,
summary,
Allegation summary, response summary,
response, yeah.
I'm sorry. Wait, can we read?
That's right. So,
Investigation summary, and then conclusions / recommendations. So I'll delete all of A through F.
conclusions / recommendations, gotcha.
Okay.
So A is allegation summary, B is response summary, C is investigation summary, and D is conclusions, recommendations / recommendations.
So, and I would just point out that the procedure of providing the complaint and response to the EAB, probably they're going to be public. Right? Not confidential.
The complaint
The complaint isn't, it's filed. with the
and the
city,
response.
But if you are distributing the response, I don't think it's going to be privileged. Just give me a heads up. You know what the expectations are of the person drafting the response.
Maybe you want to tell them that it's not.
Well, how would it be privileged?
No, I'm not
I
saying
mean,
that.
do you think, I don't think.
No, well, it certainly would be privileged because it's gonna be subject to court, first of all.
I
Right,
don't think it should be confidential.
right.
It's not gonna be,
I'm just telling you, in case anyone's wondering, because I do a lot of investigations and have been involved in litigation over various issues of confidentiality. So I know how these things work, and I just find it always very helpful to let the group that I represent know in advance, or control expectations and, you know, like, oh my God, I didn't know the media was gonna get that, or how does the media get that? I'm just telling you.
at a future meeting, can you also speak to, not now, but speak to our communications with each other, if any? Because I'd like a primer on, if I email Kathy or any of his colleagues about anything about this case, is that going to be, am I gonna have to produce that? at some
Kansas
point?
Open Records Act. kind of
Or
stuff.
whatever. You don't have to answer that now. I don't want you to, but I do wanna understand.
You should assume that it is.
I'm definitely gonna assume that.
Because it probably is. But yes, I would have.
Okay, let me see if I'm following what we're getting at here. So the policy is that the ethics officer and outside counsel do the investigation, and when it's done, present their findings to the EAB in executive session. And we're saying, as staff, we're saying the procedure is, when it's done, we're gonna email to you all, the board, before the meeting, the complaint and the response. So you have a general sense of what we're dealing with. So then when you go into executive session, you would be getting the investigator's review and recommendations of here's where we're going for, here's thoughts about going forward.
Yes, but so, again, this is not a mission or anything, but my general thought process would be, we go into executive session so that we can keep privileged and confidential what I say, and what I recommend. And if I'm drafting a report, that's for the purpose and use of only an executive session and not for dissemination or discussion outside of executive session. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I've streamlined issues that I would cover in the report, just giving a little more flexibility as to what. In all likelihood, I'd cover the things that are already listed there.
Yeah, and if we wanted to know, we'd ask you in executive
Yeah.
session.
Yeah, and there's scenarios in which no report might be issued with some clients. Sometimes the report's issued and not taken with. Sometimes we can discuss how we want to handle that, but there's particular rules about not discussing what my report conclusions are outside of that executive session. If there's one takeaway, that would be it.
Okay, so,
And I think we're covering that in this procedure, but the next issue then would be the drafting of a report about, anyway, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, it's okay. I just wanted to take a minute because I know we started late, but it is almost 7:30. We've been at this for a little over an hour. Do we want to make an agreement for when we end? Do we need to end at 7:30 or 7:45 appropriate? Because I'm thinking we do like one or two more of these, like one more page, and then we're done. We're not gonna go through this whole document. We'll pick up where we left off next time. There's no way we can get through it
Unless
all.
you're buying pizza.
I know, right?
So,
So 7:45 and we're done.
Let me ask a hypothetical question. So let's say hypothetically, I complete some investigations before the next round, the next month.
Hmm.
Are we gonna be in a position to deal with them? Or do we need to finalize this procedure before?
Ed, I think you'd be the first ethics officer.
Was that the rotation?
Yeah.
I mean, John, my feeling is if we get through the next page, we should be able to proceed
probably
with the
true.
investigation.
I just
Other
didn't know.
stuff
I'm
is,
first, I'm not gonna be at the next meeting. No, seriously, I'm not gonna be there. Have to do.
You've already made plans to move out of Wichita.
Yeah.
All right, I think one of you two.
Yeah, then it goes to- yeah, it goes by the district. Yeah. District team.
So I don't have, I'm not concerned, I've just given it some thought.
Yeah.
So that we're prepared, but I think, like I said, we get to the next couple maybe.
so the next one is 6.
All right, now, in the actual policy, policy 39, it says, at the conclusion of the investigation, the EAB, the EAD's written report shall be provided to the council. And the report shall consist of the following items. And on page 6 and 7 of that policy, it lists those items. It's a summary of complaint, scope of investigation, summary of facts, applicable sections, and the findings. So that's what's listed in policy. The procedure that we crafted, the ethics officer and or outside counsel who performs the investigation shall draft the report. Assuming the ethics officer position is filled, the ethics officer shall take the lead role in investigations, report writing, and consult with outside legal counsel for advice and assistance. Upon completion, the ethics officer shall email the report to the city council.
Is that the report that, for example, I would be bringing to the executive session? That's the one coming out.
That's the one
That's
coming
the
out.
one.
EAB's report.
And since we're rotating the responsibility of who the ex-officer is, I've forgotten that. We are.
The rotation provision is being suggested as an additional policy only for the upfront initial consideration of whether the complaint is sufficient for investigation.
Okay.
Right? Do I remember that right?
I don't recall. But, well, then that, so the ethics officer, when are we going to get a permanent ethics officer?
So is this on hold until?
We won't get it for sure until after they approve the policy.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
my thought is, just generally, do you want the legal counsel to do the first draft, just for consistency purposes? of how these things are written and flow and
Okay, so
widely different.
you all will not be doing those reports. So the piece about rotating among the board members is only for when a new complaint comes in and it's got to have the initial review. Is it sufficient? Was it signed? Was it notarized? Is it in writing? And was it presented to the city clerk?
Okay, gotcha.
It's a basic review.
I thought
But
it was
this,
a
but the six
Yeah.
procedures,
That's what I mean. So it is, in the absence of an ethics officer, a member of the board shall serve in the place of the ethics officer for purposes of determining if a complaint is frivolous or groundless on its face. So that's that initial review that says,
But that's not been a rule today.
and it's not the rule yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't do that anyway now.
Went ahead and took care of that task on
Yeah,
on a few of these.
yeah.
Okay.
No, the council authorized you to do
Okay, I
that.
thought so.
When we went to council a few weeks ago, it was authorize us to do this now, and then later we'll put in a policy another way in case the ethics officer position is vacant. It won't always go to the attorney to do it, but it would go to the board members to do just the initial review. Is this a complaint? We just got the complaint in, it's not signed. Well, okay. The ethics off, we can't decide that on staff. We can't say, well, it's not notarized. Stop. We need someone else on the board to say, look, was it presented? Is it in writing? Is it, and essentially the groundless or frivolous piece is go to that statement of policy section. Right, where it lists, here's all the things. Because if they say, this city councilman, he wears green and I hate green. Well, that's not one of the things in the policy. So you may not like that guy, but it's not an ethics issue. So that's one of the frivolous or groundless.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So. Just walk me through this. So who writes this report? Because it says assuming the ethics officer's position is filled. So if it's not filled, at this stage of the game, is it
John writes.
John?
Yes.
Okay, thank
And
you.
it's privilege to be out the window. I don't know, it's interesting, it's a very strange scenario, because usually I'm writing a report, I'm in an executive session, and that's the end of
That's the end of
my
your.
report, and then people then go to general session.
So
and then
six-
You can't decide something in executive session, but you need to find a consensus, and then you discuss it to the extent you need to do in open session, and then you make a decision. I just never encountered a situation where I draft a report, and then we're trying to keep that confidential.
And then you draft the
And then
second.
Okay.
in order to keep it confidential, and you need a report to come from executive session, someone else has got to draft it, but
So
are we
I'll be
making
doing-
this too complicated at this point?
A little bit. So I'll be doing that. That's an administrative function, okay? So WSU is not gonna contract with the city of Wichita to make any judgments on elected officials. We're here for administration. So if the attorney comes in with a report, talks to you all in executive session, I'm in there too. And I'm writing the basics of what's the public document. And I'm listening and I'm saying, okay, here's the basic things that the policy says. We need and a lot of it we can do ahead of the meeting, the summary of the complaint, investigation, the facts, right? But then when you all decide, okay, here's what we think we want to decide, then I'm sitting there writing that in, saying, here's what the ethics board said. It doesn't, it says the basics. That's the report that becomes a public document. It gets sent to the city council. It gets available on the city website as part of the public documents would be the complaint, the response, and that report.
Right, but in procedure six, this
Okay.
is where we get, it says the ethics officer and or outside counsel who performs the investigation shall draft the report.
Yeah,
it shouldn't say that. It shouldn't say that.
It shouldn't say outside counsel. Well, I guess it could, but I shouldn't, unless you don't care if it's
Privilege.
privileged or not.
His role should end when he comes.
Okay, so you're just saying it shouldn't say outside counsel on that.
Yeah,
just
what I don't
ethics
know,
officer.
so I draft a privilege report. I draft another, I'm
Yep.
just.
Yeah, that-
Situation.
Okay.
You can imagine that fight, particularly for cutting and pasting from the.
Yeah,
The ethics officer shall draft the report.
Well, it's just a procedure, and so the report is actually legally coming from the EAB. a report shall be provided to the council. And so the procedure is, who's gonna draft who's gonna do the draft of the report? And so I think, I mean, everything we would want in writing, I think should say the EAB will provide a report to the city council. And I don't know if I wanna put in writing who's doing all the drafting,
I think that's good.
who's doing all the drafting and stuff. Cause the deposition that we have to sit for, that's not, you know, well, you said here, cause it's all be public, we ain't deny this.
So if we didn't specify, then the EAB, which could include administrative staff.
The EAB will provide a report to, and the report shall include the things that you have here.
And I'm just thinking out loud. Why do we have to issue a report from the executive session? Is that just because it's in the policy?
Okay, well, it
No,
does,
it says at the policy is at the conclusion of the investigation, EAB shall provide, maybe this is poor drafting.
Yeah, that's why I was a little confused which report we're talking about here, because the policy says that reports, investigation's done, and that I report to the EAB. I don't know if it necessarily says I have to draft a written report. And then we would go into executive session. Do you want a report from executive session, or do you want a report after the general meeting? What was,
after the meeting.
so,
Right, so your
It shouldn't say at the
investigation,
conclusion, it shouldn't say at the conclusion of the investigation, it should say, after a decision has been made by the EAB, a report shall be provided to the city council.
I like
Right.
that.
It-
That cleans it up in terms of my
oh,
convoluted thought process. Okay, I'm bringing a report to the executive session. Someone's typing a different report in the executive session. That didn't make sense to me. but-
you're really getting caught up on the use of the word report. Because you're not taking a report to the executive, you're taking your investigation. Now, if you, however you craft that is fine, but that has nothing to do with this. When this is talking about report, it's talking about the public document. After the executive session, the EAB is gonna make a decision in a public meeting.
I got you.
And instead of just taking minutes of that meeting, you're actually making a report on each and every case.
Yeah.
That report includes these things per the policy, the summary, the scope, the facts, the findings. I'm just saying, a lot of
Right.
that would be drafted by staff or by the EO before the executive session, the findings, the
Right,
facts.
except for this says
And then
the ethics officer, but the challenge is that what you're saying, Kathy, is not what these words say.
Okay,
What you're describing is not what 6 says.
okay,
How would you best craft that
But I
to
agree
be what we're
with
trying to?
what you want, what you're saying.
I agree with what you're saying, that's just not what this says.
okay. So the procedure 6, the ethics officer shall draft the report. Because we already took out and or outside counsel performs investigation.
But I think the reason we had that there is because we don't have an EO currently. So I think that was the reason why we put.
Yeah, and that's okay, we take it out.
Okay.
But
The
I
ethics
think you
officer shall
strike the
draft-
whole sentence, and you say, at the conclusion of the investigation. And we can debate, when is it concluded? Or after the EAB has completed its, I'm thinking out loud now,
Made a decision.
made a decision. The EAB shall provide a report to the city council.
It's the EO. So once the board makes a decision,
Right,
okay, the presenting of the report to the council is an email. In other words, if you say a board gives a report to a council, how do you do that? There's 7 of you. Okay, and
because
Ethics
we
officer
are a
is the chair.
royal we, like her highness.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's what we're
but the
trying to get
report
away
is
from.
coming, but the report is coming, the report is coming from all of us. And what I think John is saying, and at least what I'm thinking, well, John can speak for himself, we don't wanna put down who's Zoom and who in here, because that complicates.
well, think about it. The ethics officer is the chair of this board. So it's just saying, on behalf of the board, once the board makes a decision, the chair, the ethics officer, sends the report to the council.
Shall provide a report to the council, right, but but who writes it and all of that, how the report is written, I don't think needs to be in here. What you're saying is effectively, you guys will be writing the report. And so if it's not the EAB, then the ethics officer, once the EAB makes a determination, a final determination, the EO will provide a report to city council.
Yes.
Period.
Okay, I'll rewrite and that's what we'll say.
I have a question.
Okay.
Under the topics of the report, what is scope of investigation? Does that put that out in line, or something?
It's in the policy.
Oh, it is, okay. I don't know.
So, yeah, we just have to, if we don't think the words are descriptive or accurate, we should probably suggest changing it. But summary of complaints, pretty clear. Scope of investigation. I interviewed some people and I looked at the policy and I looked at the marketing piece and I don't know. What do you want to make public? I honestly, I would look to your advice for that.
I'm thinking out loud, summary of complaint, that's fine, because that's already public. We could include summary of response, since that's already public, but I think less is more here.
With summary of facts.
Summary of investigation.
Yeah.
Well, summary of facts should be second.
Wouldn't that be in the complaint? In your
Yeah,
summary
no,
of
I think
complaint?
that's covered under the, I would say summary of complaint, summary of investigation.
You wanna say, well, summary of complaint, summary of response, description of investigative procedure process,
Just summary of investigation.
summary of investigation, not scope of.
Instead of scope, say summary. That makes more sense, really.
Yeah, that's what I would write.
Mhm.
And then, findings.
Yeah.
You don't want to quote the sections of the code.
Well, that's what you would arguably put in the findings.
Yeah.
Into findings, meaning the facts or the meaning the.
No, the
The
findings.
last section
Okay.
would be what you decided.
Okay, so
But if you want a separate section on applicable sections.
it doesn't have to be a separate section. it just
So I
has to
would
be
think that
one.
each complaint
Well-
ultimately, as you separate, even if the complaining party didn't have the wherewithal to find particular code provisions, that when you summarize it, you would say, John said that, you know, Commissioner did whatever did X, which is a violation of, you know.
Or would it, yeah, because I mean hypothetically, when you're screening these, you might look and see, if they said anything that would suggest a violation of a specific provision, and they mentioned the specific provision in so many words, so to speak. And then they mention, you know, facts that if true and interpreted a certain way, anyway. So yeah, no, I didn't mean to make that one more complicated than it needed to be.
Well, from everything I've heard you say, from 1 to 5 in the policy, all we want to ask the council to change is on number 2, we replace the word scope with the word summary. Because we're summarizing the complaint, the investigation, the facts, quoting the sections of the code, doesn't have to be its own section, but it's gonna be in there. And then the findings of the EAB.
But summary of investigation, and summary of facts, is the same thing. Or summary of investigation, what you did.
If that's
I think
important.
you should give a summary of what you did. You don't need to say the exact people you interviewed, right? But you would say, I made appropriate interviews or summary of interviews. I looked at this, I looked at that. Does that make sense? You don't just plug their names, but you give a summary.
So it is helpful, this is all gonna be covered. If you're not gonna say, I interviewed these 7 witnesses and, you know, looked at these 15 documents. And you're gonna say something as innocuous as I completed a thorough investigation, then I don't think you need to say that. Cause it's not helpful. I mean, but, you know, it's probably helpful for the public to know what we did or what the investigator did.
Yeah, I'm trying, I've got all sorts of
Could you say
different
something
scenarios.
like after the completion of the policy? I mean, wouldn't that summary, and they get a copy of the policy when they file the complaint, so they know that we went through those steps? Couldn't it be something simple like that?
Let me take a stab at this.
Yeah,
When someone investigates and presents to you in an executive session, you're gonna say, well, did you talk to so-and-so? What did so-and-so say? Well, did you ask this guy? You know what I mean? So you will know, and you'll be able to say, was this thoroughly investigated? And then the summary for public document, okay, this is gonna be put out on a website and it's gonna be, you know, quoted in news reports and copy. The public needs a summary, because that's your job as a board, is to sort through the details. And if the public doesn't trust the board, well, you know, you can't help that. But
And my own question is how detailed should the summary be?
I know.
That, you know, because if you say summarily, that, and after completion of a thorough investigation period, I mean, and nobody's gonna believe that.
Right.
Right, so there's,
I don't know the answer, you know,
no, to
but
me, it's
There's
summary of
competing
summary of investigation. I interviewed 7 people, it took me 12 hours. You know, something like that that tells you, I didn't just talk to one person and it took me 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
Well,
If
it
you say the magnitude, or I spent 5 hours working on this, whatever it is. Does that give some level of?
yeah, it's a Goldilocks scenario. What's the right amount? Because there's probably some due process issues involved too. If you make a finding that someone violated, they probably have some due process arguments to tell them nothing as to why you decided it, but yet we have privacy issues of maybe not wanting to include everything, every witness specifically said. So it's just a fine line that I usually walk that tightrope in each case differently in terms of saying I interviewed 100 people. I don't say who I interviewed or what each one said versus cases where I literally give a pretty verbatim description of what each person said. It just depends. But here, I think there has to be some level of specificity for due process, but what that is, that's the question. Right?
And if you think about what the city council was thinking when they wrote the word scope
Yeah, maybe.
of investigation, then that, I mean, to me, scope, if I were writing the word scope, I would think, well, what all did this mean? What was the
Yeah,
scope?
the more you meant to talk about it, the more I like the word scope. Because that's kind of what, here's what I did in terms of the scope. I interviewed 3 employees, 2 private citizens. I reviewed all the documents provided by all parties and all statements. I looked at these policies. I don't mind that so much.
You know, and that's a good
And
point,
you
because
can do that easy.
the form says, ask the person to say, please provide names of witnesses. So part of describing the scope of the investigation is, I interviewed all the witnesses that the person said.
Interview to identify the
Yeah.
witness.
Yeah, plus I added 3 other people, or, you know, I asked those people, who else should I interview, and they told me there's a couple other guys, and so I interviewed them too. I mean, that's describing the scope.
Right.
Okay,
And then we can decide in executive session.
Yes.
You don't want to give them something to
Which direction we want to go specificity wise.
just do that.
okay, you all have been very helpful tonight, it is past 7:45. I think getting us there, step 6, gets us to where we need to be to keep slogging through these,
Thank you,
and,
because that helps me.
yeah, it really helps,
I have a question.
yes.
I know at our first meeting, Janet had said, we're gonna have, you know, more meetings at the beginning, and then it'll be just based on.
Yeah.
Whatever. Should we have another meeting more quickly than second? I don't remember how we're scheduling them,
Yeah.
but should we maybe look at next week or 2 weeks or something more quickly?
Instead of waiting a whole month.
Yeah.
I'll see about that. The next one is February 9th, so that's about a month.
Cause you're going to council on the 24th. And we're still gonna have more revisions to propose in the rest of this. So,
Right, so if we could get another one,
So you meaning we might come up with more policy changes to this discussion?
that's a good point.
so, I mean, I don't know if next Thursday or it's the following Thursday, if people are available.
And let's look, and the other option is maybe we could delay the council workshop till February workshop. if We had to.
What is it?
I was gonna ask, is a virtual option feasible as well, or would we prefer to meet in person for this type of discussion? I was gonna say.
I prefer
In person.
Yeah,
I'm
I prefer to
available
sit
next
across
week.
from Ed.
Pardon?
I prefer to keep Ed directly in my line of sight.
When it's this much discussion, I have found that Zoom is harder because it's harder to figure out who wants to speak and.
Yeah. Can I ask a hypothetical question?
No.
Do you think there should be a limit on the number of cases I bring to? the board session? I don't know how this is gonna play out.
Depending on how complicated they are. I mean, I don't think we should, I'm not, for me, I would rely on your best judgment, you know.
Just some might be easy. And some might be related to others. There might be two cases on the same subject, and so you could do those the same night, and it'd probably be less confusing for everybody to not bring it up more than once.
And, I mean, I can even meet in the day if you wanna, do these meetings have to be available on? Okay.
Yeah, we have one member who really needs to meet in the evenings, so the 6 o'clock was about the earliest time we could come up with. And I guess, I don't know that everybody has calendars here, but if we were going to look at 2 weeks out to get one more meeting in before February 9th, we'd probably be looking at the week of January 23rd. And so, and where is this Wednesday or is this Thursday?
Thursday.
We're on Thursday
I'm
now.
not available on the 26th.
Not available 26th, about the 25th. Look at Wednesday, the 25th of January.
When is the workshop for January?
24th, yeah, so either,
Would it be possible to do it as quickly as 1 week from now?
And I can do it on the 19th.
19th,
I could do 19.
Shockers, Shockers are at Memphis, so away game for the Shockers. The 19th.
I think that's it.
Mhm.
I'm available.
Gina?
Yeah, I mean. Thursday.
You too?
Thursday, hang on,
I'm
Monday,
good.
Thursday, yeah.
I won't have anything to present necessarily, if that should help.
We'll basically update both these documents.
Well, yeah, let's finish
Swap
it, let's
them
finish
again.
That would be great to do that.
And that way
Okay.
you don't have to move your council.
We will, we will try to get a room for Thursday, January 19th at 6 p.m.
And so, John, you plan on presenting on the 9th?
February?
Uh-huh,
I think so.
okay.
I'll let you know if for some reason
I just
it takes longer than I could possibly imagine, but
No,
I think,
I won't be here, so.
You can.
Oh, it's,
Oh, you
it's
won't be
February
there.
9th when you're gonna miss,
So
right?
February 9th, I'm gonna be here, and you can't participate in executive session via Zoom.
Right.
So it'll be a quick meeting, because I won't be here.
Be our first executive session, we'll have to figure it out. Let's see, so the only other thing on the agenda to do tonight is, like I said, we've got the February 9th meeting here, and then we'll set up a meeting on the 19th of January, and we'll find a room and we'll send a new calendar item out. And then the status reports on complaints and investigations, I just wanted to mention that we still, as you know, have 4 complaints, basically 2 investigations about to begin, and a third one is sent to an elected official, and so I'm awaiting that response. And the 4th one has been deemed incomplete because it didn't have one of those basic requirements in the policy. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that they might complete it and resend it back, but at this point, that's where the four are.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all very much. I hope you have a grilled cheese sandwich or something tonight. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Yes, that's my sister-in-law.
Oh, that's your sister-in-law?
Yes.
I love Jackie.
Yeah. that was- that is awesome.
Corinthian and his brother.